and during several discussions, we have also I think we have had similar discussions. What kind of companies we need in Estonia? What kind of challenges we have to face in this respect? And in near future, we want to have a kind of open discussion with our industry, preparing this strategy. And I think the cooperation with industry is a key word in here. Also, as Matti said, there are also risks involved, which we have to tackle somehow. And if you take a broader picture, I think one of the key questions is how we define Web3. Does it include DeFi, DAOs, NFTs, different kind of crypto assets, and how we, in which area we want to focus from the perspective of ministry. So this is an issue what we have to deal in near future, and we hope to deal with this successfully.
Thank you.
Okay, from very narrow point of view of central bankers, I want companies which make monetary policy transmission faster and more smoother. And there is an issue in Europe, not only in Estonia, that we have bank-based financial intermediaries, and we have very fragmented capital markets in Europe compared with US, which is a single capital market. So basically, please do us a capital markets union. So that's a single and very, very clear task. Obviously, I'm in the middle of lawyers, so I need to be very careful, but let's put it this way, that harmonization of those long, endless pages of law is, I think, a no-go. It doesn't work. So make us algorithmic capital markets which just work, swap all those pages of contracts and emission prospects and legal texts as little code as possible, because, you know, if it compiles, it works. There is only one interpretation of it. If it doesn't work, it just doesn't work. So basically, the idea is to go as much as possible this kind of possibility that we still preserve national states in Europe, which is inevitable. This is our style in Europe. But the frictions which we have in those fragmented capital markets, they are not in principle are not very, very conflicting, but they are technical ones. And one way to solve such things is just to create algorithmic capital market which just works or doesn't work or fail. But it's a very smooth and very, very rapid process, and I think it would help a lot, because especially if we are in the lower edge of policy rates, you know, we do not have much further to go. We say that there is a room, and there is always a policy space. But to gain some efficiency and better efficiency for the monetary policy and stabilization, we just need to fix this issue that we don't have enough capacity in the private sector risk-sharing mechanisms like capital markets, and that's it. So just make a bank, in addition to all those fiscal federalism which people are struggling with in politicians, in addition to banking union, which is gradually building up, just create us within 1 week of hackathon, a capital markets union. By Monday it's ready, and then we start implementing it, and by Friday everything works smoothly.
So if the question is which types of Web3 companies we want to attract to Estonia, then I think in my own head I separated into 3 different categories or 3 different viewpoints. The first one is simple. The first one is my own view as an attorney, as an entrepreneur of sorts, which is, as long as it's a good business model that brings value to its customers and isn't screwing anyone over directly, then and is compliant to all the legal regulations, then you're very much welcome, whatever the project may be or from whatever field of Web3. The second view that you might have is when you look at the media and what the media is saying, and if you start doing that, it fluctuates through time, obviously, with up-and-coming regulations and hysteria around that. And if you look at the media lately, then you might say that not very many Web3 companies are welcome in Estonia, because you get viral messages forecasting the doom of Estonian Web3 companies, saying things like the new regulation bans Bitcoin and bans NFTs and stuff like that, which is obviously not true. But due to some ignorance on the part of influencers and people expressing those opinions, those messages get cycled over and over and over, and this negative connotation is created in the heads of people, which frankly speaking isn't true. And then we actually get to the third viewpoint, which is what is the actual situation in terms of legal regulations, and that directly drives into what I do from a day-to-day basis, which is analyzing various tokenization projects, tokenomics, et cetera, and giving an assessment of what that actually is in terms of Estonian law and how you could do it. I think an interesting fact from my own work is that of all the clients that have come to us, of which there are quite a few, I don't think we've ever looked at a tokenomics model and said, this cannot be done. It's illegal at its core. Usually what happens is that we explain to them that, well, if you want to do it exactly as you described, then you're going to fall under this regulation, this regulation, this regulation. It's possible to fulfill it in theory. However, it's going to be extremely expensive for you, both in terms of money and in terms of just man-hours spent on compliance. So perhaps you shouldn't do it exactly the way you described, but you should tweak some aspects of it so that you fall under some more favorable regimes. And usually, this is an interesting subject. People often come to Estonia or try to enter the Estonian market with tokenomics or features of tokens that are given to them by consultants, tokenomics consultants, who tell them you should definitely add staking, you should definitely have burning, a million other things that have nothing to do with the core functionality of what the specific Web3 project is actually trying to do, but might put you inadvertently under some completely insane regulation in terms of what you're actually trying to do. So for instance, you add staking and burning to your token, and you suddenly...
Guaranteed yield?
Sorry?
Guaranteed yield?
Yeah, of course.
Shout out for that, right?
Of course, yeah. You do some of those things, and even unbeknownst to yourselves, you might fall under securities regulation, right? Because you're promising some sort of return expectation to your customer base, even though the underlying project had nothing to do with that. It was supposed to be a utility token providing access to some platform to get some random service that has nothing to do with burning or staking. But the tokenomics experts on the field say you got to add those, because if you don't, people are not going to be hyped about it. They're not going to buy your tokens. And then they come to us and we say, like, just cut all the fluff. Just tell us what you actually want to do with the project, and we'll figure out whether or not that is actually viable or not. And the interesting thing is that most of the Web3 projects that are trying to enter the Estonian market have nothing to do with the two regulators sitting to my left, because as was already mentioned, the FIU, for instance, is dealing very specifically with cryptocurrency, basically, at its simplest term, meaning you have tokens, the intended purpose of which is to go to a store and buy a Tesla. But most Web3 projects are not that. They're not intended to be a general use cryptocurrency used in all fields of life. Basically, instead of fiat currency, they're much more nuanced and much more specific, and might not even fall under the definition of being a cryptocurrency. And the same is true for the FSA as well, in that most Web3 projects would not fall under securities or financial services regulation if thought through well and are actually providing some utility. So I think the emphasis in the media, and as well probably from the government and the authorities, should be focusing more on explaining what we're actually regulating, and also giving out the vibe of, guys, the Web3 market is wide open in Estonia. It's just there are some very specific projects like exchanges and STOs, basically, which are extremely heavily regulated, but which can also be done. But if you don't fall under those, if you're not an exchange and you're not doing an STO, basically, then most likely you're going to have a very good time, and it's fine.
The others have a good time as well if they
Yes, of course.
if they are in line with the law, of course.
I agree. Everyone will have a good time.
Thank you. So I just have one last question. A current event from United Kingdom, the crypto asset exchange, the engagement group, they're having some community engagement where they're reaching out to industry and to just do a test, some beta runs. And they're considering to regulate stablecoins, to have an official stablecoin that could be used in commerce or in different things. We're very early in the game, so I just wanted to see briefly, what do you think? Probably let's start the other direction. Let's start this way. I think you guys.
Let's say that we thought in the beginning that this is a great competitor for central banking business, but we have been around for 350 years, a little bit more. And the main source is not necessarily the comfort of use or one-to-one exchange to fiat, but the main source is basically the credibility of balance sheet of any issuer. So as long as you don't create any credible private sector entity than central bank, then I think we are quite safe. But having said so, obviously, we keep an eye on what kind of value it can add. And then basically, for us, it's even more easier technologically than and for many of you to create any kind of digital currency or whatever, because basically we have been doing it in accounting terms ever since we opened up the general ledger, and instead of distributing cash, we just wrote ones and zeros to the balance sheet. So basically it's an old-fashioned way of issuing digital currencies.
Tomas,
Well, regarding stablecoins, well, I think stablecoin is just a specific type of crypto asset. I think it's more important to take a broader picture. Well, actually, European Commission is proposed a special kind of regulation in this respect already in the end of 2020, which have been discussed already 2 years, and now European Parliament discussing this kind of regulation, and also this kind of regulation including stable coins, as there are kind of feelings that stable coins may cause some kind of threat to financial stability, and that's why it's proper it's justified to find a proper regulation in this sense. But I think in Ministry of Finance we do not differentiate, do not make much difference between stable coins or any other coins. I think on one hand we want to look at the opportunities what Web3 may bring to economy. On the other hand, we certainly want to understand the risks that different crypto assets, including stable coins, may bring. So I think this is main goal and issue for us in Ministry of Finance.
Any other comments?
Before we get to the regulators, I wanted to explain that if you ask me what's the situation with stable coins, whether or not I'm allowed to sell stable coins on my exchange, et cetera, then the honest answer is I have no idea. I have no idea because when you look at a stable coin, for instance, a USDT or something like that, it very much looks like a derivative, meaning the most classic form of security there is. There has been some talk from the European Commission also indicating to that effect, but not giving a final answer. At the same time, it seems to be fine because everyone is doing it, and the regulators don't seem to have a problem with it. So I'm very much looking forward to what the next two people have to say about it.
So, I mean, I will start. We are the supervisors. we are not necessarily the regulators.
True.
We are part of the regulation side, but we are still the supervisors. We apply what is in front of us. So what is the law, and what the law says, we apply to this. Coming back to the UK, I mean, the UK has been there all the time in different aspects. I mean, different sandboxes when they started. So they are always looking possibilities and ways what to do next, how to do things differently. And this is usually the case, that regulation will wake up when there is a crisis. This is a very usual way of dealing things. So first, as you were pointing out, that it's not, I mean, it's not said that you cannot do this, but I think that globally, if we're talking about Web3, if you read what the SEC is doing in the US, for example, so everyone is trying to figure out what is the best way how to regulate them, and this is what I'm always saying, that regulation is not bad. Regulation is actually good, because then someone provides all the legal basis, and we protect therefore the customers, and we protect the service providers themselves as well as the technology. So I think it's a matter of time, as I was saying before, that today we're testing, and testing is not a bad thing, because if we test, if we build new things, we innovate. We find new routes, we find new ways how to make things better. But then after a year or 2 years, we will see the regulation, and this is the same for stablecoins. If we remember the first cases when stablecoins were about to come out, the central bankers were so against it. I mean, this is something that cannot happen. We remember what happened with Facebook. So today, the central bankers, as you said, as you saw, they were one of the lenient here, more in favor of the innovation. Let's see where we end up.
So your question was about that what we think about the English initiatives on
Yeah, what do you think about what might happen there? And take it anywhere you want.
Okay, I'm not that familiar with the UK initiatives. However, I know that the Bank of England has published papers on risks. I mean, IOSCO has published papers on crypto stuff. FSB, not the Russian one, but the international organization, Financial Stability Board, has published papers there on including stable coins. My colleague already told, I mean, here in the panel that, you know, it of course depends on elements of stable coin, but they kind of feel or we understand they are more closely related to being derivative instruments. That's also view in America or US. The SEC, the current head of SEC, Mr. Gensler, tries to form kind of coalition with the CFTC to address the stable coins. But what is the issue at hand here? Listen, the crypto world, taking the overall financial world, is really, really marginal. I mean, it's growing, and when it's growing, then also the governments will be more interested in, for several reasons. I mentioned namely two. This is stability, and this is transparency. Worldwide, I think we're not there yet that the regulators and supervisors are that interested in this segment of financial markets, so to say. And in a way, historically, I have also seen that in a way it's good, because it's also a possibility to figure out new kind of business models and to test. And then something happens. I mean, my colleague Mattis Mäker was also referring, usually it's some kind of crisis or some big time loss for society, when then there will be demand. Oh, let's regulate. And then usually this business will be regulated to death, but in better cases not to death, but they will be quite heavily regulated. So currently I think the crypto world is not that heavily yet regulated, and the regulators and supervisors are not that aggressive there. But the regulation is coming, and the aggressiveness, so to say, in a good sense, will come as well. This will go hand in hand with the growth of crypto markets. Why the crypto is growing, it's another story. I mean, we can discuss about this in another panel, but I see it's a function of central bank's monetary policy as investment object. And then in certain areas of the world, the payment systems are not that well developed. This is another thing. And the third one, which is unfortunate one, but I have to mention it, since it's not regulated as heavily as regulated financial market, usually the bad people, the criminals, will be there as well. So those three things, I think, are kind of underlying forces how the crypto has been developing. Now when the central banks are changing their monetary policies, I think it will be reflected in the prices of crypto assets as well. And then other things, let's see where we are going. I mean, the regulation anyway will be heavier. That's my kind of firm belief, at least. So that's my answer to stablecoin. Not really straightforward answer, but a very broad one.
Well, thank you very much to our guests. Just a preview of what's coming downstairs as we continue the discussion. If any of you have listened to 1/10 of this, you'll understand that these are huge opportunities for you. And let's get an 11th unicorn in Estonia, all right? That's how you make big companies, is working together like that.